Chair Mello?
Yes. I'm greatly concerned about what happened with the street sweeping contract. I'm sure that most of the council is aware through the copying of some emails back and forth between myself and Mr. Dean that I have a problem with the way this was handled. I've looked at the city codes after looking at state codes. The state codes do provide a general mandate to cities to proceed with giving contracts to avoid the appearance of impropriety, cronyism, favoritism, that sort of thing. And here at this last council meeting, the council decided not to take any bids. And to me, that seemed very odd, considering that in the past, when this was taken away from Dixon Sanitary Service, they immediately went to bid. So in reviewing the contract code, which is chapter 26 of our codes, and I'll be brief with this, Mr. Mayor, the main portion of this that addresses is purchases and contract of supplies and other non-professional services. And under the definitions for non-professional services, it means that it includes services of a non-professional character of any type, description of variety, including but not limited to tree trimming services, janitorial services, repair services, and automotive vehicles. To me, this is definitely a non-professional type of service, because professional services are things such as legal representation, engineering, and that sort of thing. Going further into the code, it has administrative procedures. And at the last line of it says, at first line says, the city manager shall prepare, subject to approval by the city council, administrative procedures sufficient to carry out the intent of this part. Such procedures shall include methods for the utilization of informal bidding procedures for those contracts and purchases to which the normal competitive bidding requirements of this part are inapplicable. To me, that means that there is a normal competitive bidding requirement for giving out contracts. The next section in here is collusion with the bidder, which says that anybody that gives away a contract and not at the lowest cost is guilty of a misdemeanor. I only bring that up as a passing sort of thing. Section 26.310 says, when advertising required, where the cost of supplies or non-professional services required by the city equals or exceeds the sum of $10,000, the city manager shall request the city clerk call for formal bids, thereby advertising at least once in the official newspaper of the city, not less than 10 calendar days prior to the date set for receiving such bids. The city manager, when he or she deems it to be advisable, may require more than one advertising of the call for bids. We avoided the bidding process. Now, I've been told, and I'm sure you're aware, that by the city attorney, that the franchise agreement does not require us to do this. The problem with that is the franchise agreement is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a service that should have been bid. There was no franchise agreement. We're looking at amending the franchise agreement. You still have to go out and determine who is the low-cost bidder. The fact that we went out to bid the last time says that we should have done that this time. I just have a large problem with this. I want this to be put back on the agenda. I'd like to see the process of proceeding with granting this amendment to the sanitary service to be held off, at least until we have a chance to discuss this in more detail as to the appropriateness and propriety of what we have done. I think that we're treading down a path towards potential litigation because there was no fairness in giving away this contract, especially being you had a person up here saying that he was left out completely of the process. I find it hard to believe that we would not have contacted a person, or when the person's in contact with our staff and our staff is not telling him that there's something going on. I think there's a large problem with that. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and before we move on to Councilmember Kaler, I'd like Mr. Dean, our city attorney, since you've raised some issues and you have been in correspondence with the city attorney via email, which we now have copies of, to, I guess, clarify some statements or to bring us up to speed on the issue.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councilmember Charamello raises a point with respect to the process that the city used in order to amend the franchise, and that's really where the crux of the issue is. Your code does not really have a process for franchise awards or for amending franchise agreements. As you know, this service was originally provided under franchise. The city then went out to bid and utilizing exactly the procedures that Mr. Charamello refers to, entered into a contract with Contract Sweeping Services. And it is not doing that this time. Chapter 26, which is a part of your purchasing ordinance in your code, applies when the city is making expenditures. So if you have an expenditure, a city expenditure of a given amount, the code provides what procedures are applicable to those kinds of contracts. So if it's a certain amount, you must advertise. If it's a certain amount, you must bid, and so forth. But the expenditure is by the city. The expenditure in this case by the city is actually zero. That was, as I understood it, the staff's point in going in this particular direction is that your general fund would not have to spend any money. Both the gentleman, Mr. Bella, and Mr. Charamello are correct that the overall expense to someone of street sweeping might be cheaper going another way. That's entirely possible. But your code addresses expenditures by the city. And in this case, the expenditure by the city is very much cheaper than $125,000. It's zero, because the city won't be paying at all. So I think the process can be critiqued on a political level, certainly, and that's a council decision. I'm comfortable with the process from a legal perspective. The only other thing that I would point out to you is that your council procedures provide, with respect to motions for or requests for reconsideration, that they should be made at the same meeting that the council takes action and may only be made by a council member who voted with the side that prevailed. That's only a procedure. The council can, if it wishes, overturn that, but that's the procedure that you currently have.
Okay, any questions of the city attorney?
I have one. It was mentioned that we committed a misdemeanor, or there was some alleged misdemeanor. Is that true?
I believe that it was not alleged that anyone committed a misdemeanor. I think the council
did.
member merely indicated that colluding to avoid a bid would be a misdemeanor under our code, and I'm not sure that he actually said that anybody had done that. I don't believe anybody has done that to my knowledge.
All right.
I guess the other thing that I would point out, as long as you batted it back in my direction, Mr. Vice Mayor, is that the matter is not on the agenda. If the council wants to discuss it, then we do need to put it on the agenda.
Okay. Any other questions of the city attorney? Okay, Michael, you've indicated that you want it on the agenda. Do you want to formally request that then?
Yes, I would.
And your request is?
To please put the issue of the bidding process for street sweeping on the agenda for discussion.
Okay. City manager's aware of that. We'll put that on the agenda.
Thank you.